People across the United Kingdom are casting ballots in a snap general election called by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak 6 months ahead of schedule, that is. Voters are to decide if the Conservative Party leader will remain and continue in the top job or if Keir Starmer of the main opposition Labour Party will become the new Prime Minister. The number of seats up for grabs across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland are 650, which comprises of the United Kingdom. A party needs to secure 326 seats to have a majority in Parliament. Well, during the 2019 election, 15 Indian origin candidates became parliamentarians. Now, there are as many as 26 Indian origin candidates who are also contesting. Before we take a deep dive into the Indian diaspora in the United Kingdom and its parliament, where are they located and who are the Indian origin MPs in the UK is what we're going to show you on the big screen, and then we will go to our guests. Of course, this is the demographic division that we are focusing on right now. Of course, the United Kingdom is replete with immigrants. The Indian voters in the United Kingdom are 1.8 million plus, 3.1% of the population. The Pakistani voters in the United Kingdom, no less, 1.6 million. Which is 2.6% of the population. The Bangladeshi voters, not so much, at 625,000, 1% of the population. And the total voters in the United Kingdom is 47.6 million. So it is an important election, especially for Rishi Sunak, who holds the current top job. He's an MP from Richmond. The party is the Conservatives. And Gagan Mohindra is, of course, the other Indian diaspora member of parliament who is representing the Conservatives as well. He is an MP for Southwest Hertfordshire, a popular place with Indians. And Claire Coutinho is from East Surrey. She is also represented by the Conservative Party. Navendu Mishra, he's an MP from Stockport. Munira Wilson is another member of parliament, but from the Liberal Democratic Party. Preeti Patel, of course, very popular, served in a number of positions with the Conservatives in the past as well, has also raked up a few controversies in the past. Mr. Alok Sharma, he is from Reading West. Ranil Jayawardene, North East Hampshire, Member of Parliament. Suella Braverman, she's from Fareham. Of course, she also raked up a lot of controversy when she spoke about how stringent immigration laws should be, and also her stance against India were of great in fact value. Preeti Kaur Gill, another popular MP from Birmingham, a place very popular with the Indian diaspora. Tanmanjeet Singh Desi, he's from Slough. Virendra Sharma, Member of Parliament from Ealing, Southall, a very important place once again for Indian and Pakistani diaspora. They are concentrated very close to Southall, which is of course on the border of Hounslow. Lisa Nandi, another Labour MP from Wigan. Seema Malhotra from Heston of the Labour Party. Valerie Vaz from Walsall South, Member of Parliament of the Labour Party. In fact, an important election for Rishi Sunak. His temperament, his aptitude and of course his decisions in the past are going to be up for a lot of test. We're going to talk about this. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, joins me on the show. Mr. Adit Kothari, founder of the Indic Society, also with us on the platform. Mr. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert and political commentator, also joins us on the show. Gautam Mukherjee, last but not the least, senior journalist, also with us on the program. Gautam, just as a disclaimer, I've just returned from the United Kingdom a couple of days back. This election, of course, is of great value to me as well, because the United Kingdom also happens to be my birthplace. But regardless of that, we also need to discuss what is going to lie ahead for Rishi Sunak. It is very, very strange, for the lack of a better word, that he called upon this election, despite his unpopularity, 6 months in advance. Of course, the United Kingdom under his prime ministership has suffered a lot of problems. The first one being inflation, people flocking out of London. The immigration issues is also something that Rishi Sunak took palpable action against. But the fact of the matter is that people and Brits are still not convinced whether this man can lead the country or not. What are your analysis of what's going to happen in the United Kingdom?
Well, common sense tells you Labour is going to win the massive majority.
Well, they haven't been in power in a long time.
The Conservatives have had a long innings, many prime ministers. The public is not happy. with their performance as far as Rishi Sunak goes. It's remarkable that he's hung in there and hasn't been hoofed out like his predecessors in three or four of them lasted bare weeks and months. But I think he's realized that he can't go the next 6 months without a revolt and being kicked out. So he might as well have the election now and leave Downing Street as Prime Minister, as the ex-Prime Minister. Go and resign, meet the King, and go back to his millions, if not billions. But it is definitely Starmer's turn, and I think it's about time, really. And as far as India is concerned, reports are saying that he will be keen on finalizing the FTA and getting on with a closer relationship with India in multiple ways. So, from our point of view, it seems to be all right. Labour is no longer radical left, apparently, supporting Afghanistan, supporting Kashmir. Those kind of people have been put to the side. Starmer is centrist, and he needs to be if he wants to win the election, then he knows it. Vinny.
Adit, how do you see the situation? Of course, one thing is very, very clear, Adit, that all that hoopla and jubilation that India had about Rishi Sunak becoming the Prime Minister really did not fructify in any performance or a better performance between the two countries in terms of relationship. The immigration laws, regardless of who was affected, were taken up by Rishi Sunak. A number of other pleas, regarding the stuff that lies within the United Kingdom was also not paid much heed to. Where do you stand on this entire United Kingdom election, and what does this mean for India? It's one thing that, of course, the Indian diaspora is participating in these elections, and we've had a number of members of parliaments who've done stellar jobs. But what does this mean for Rishi Sunak and India, of course?
Hi, Vinny. Thanks for having me. It's a shame you didn't get in touch with me while you were here in Britain. It would have been nice to catch up. But, Rishi Sunak, I don't think has been all that bad as, you have painted out. He has worked on the India-UK relations. And the testimony to that is how many how far we've actually come on the FTA. The FTA was actually quite close to be closing out. There were very minuscule issues that needed to be ironed out before it could be formally sanctioned. Obviously, India didn't want to take a chance, and they wanted, this general elections to get over, and then probably, work out the rest of the issues with whichever party comes into power next. So he has done quite a bit. Even on the Khalistani issues, he was seen as somebody who was overtly wanting to tackle this issue, who was, ready to listen to the various groups within the parliamentary committees, whether that be the William Shawcroft report, the Colin Bloom report, and he actually wanted to address those issues very seriously. And he was on press in India, when he was there for the G20 summit. He spoke very categorically against this, that this is something which is completely not tolerable, and British polity will not encourage or entertain this kind of feral activities by the Khalistani. So he did have the heart in right place. He did have the political will to carry out his intentions, which is where the problem lies. Because where Rishi Sunak, where he failed, Gautam Mukherjee will probably understand this, because I'm going to say this in Bengali. In Bengali, there's a saying called "Ei dike jao na oi dike, majamaji kono rasta nahi." So basically, you have to go either right or left. There is no middle path. And where Rishi Sunak actually fell was because he was trying to appease everybody. You cannot be that boy who wants to go and appease everybody. You have to select your electorate that you want to actually, appease and cater to. And, you have to be very careful about how you treat the Islamists in Britain. And, that's where Rishi Sunak fell miserably short, because he was actually going out to pander to a certain a certain pedigree of people here, which has cost him quite miserably. His weak position, his inactions on the Pakistani grooming gangs, for example, that was a classic case which he should have taken up very proactively, and he failed miserably. Labour Party's definition, which is a very problematic definition of the Islamophobia, which they took in 2018, for example, the Conservatives had all the time to actually criticize that, because what that definition of Islamophobia does, if that goes into Parliament and formally becomes a bill, it actually restricts our ability to criticize Islam or to criticize the Islamic history, which basically, goes into curtailing your freedom of speech. Now, the Conservatives actually had a lot of opportunity to take that up and fight it tooth and nail and say this is wrong. This is basically you're going against the fundamental principles of freedom of speech, but they didn't. So that is where I think Rishi Sunak has lost this election. It's no surprise that the Conservatives are definitely not winning. But what is going to be more shocking is if he becomes the first sitting prime minister to actually lose his own seat. Richmond is quite a tricky wicket, and it'll be quite interesting to watch that game tomorrow. Beneath.
Good points there. And Mr. Lali, how do you look at this election? Of course, Rishi Sunak hasn't done that well, or he hasn't done that badly as well. He's been on the fence on a number of things, but when it comes to India, the concerns that started before he was prime minister, most of them continue to remain. Of course, one of them is the Khalistani element.
Thank you, Vineet. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here amongst such a distinguished panel. And while it could be Adit's loss that you didn't catch up with him in England, but I think it's India's reverse brain drain that you, after being born in England, are back with us. So Vineet, we're happy to have you in India. Vineet, I wouldn't blame the poor gentleman, because in the last 14 years, they've been playing musical chair with, I think, about 5 prime ministers. So what do you? The man doesn't come with a magic wand. But Vineet, cricket euphoria. So I think if the Cricket World Cup is any indication, I mean, a sport that was born in England is probably dead in England by now, and we've just won the World Cup. I mean, George McCartney in 1773 said the sun never sets in the British Empire. I think we need the sundown has started, because 11% inflation in the last 8 months, and the Brexit is costing them $124 billion yearly. So obviously something is not right. And Vineet, again, it's even more ironical that the English brown prime minister that they had, Rishi's personal wealth is more than that of the king. So if that means anything. But having said that, Vineet, there are 5 issues I understood which are going to cost them their government, and they could come down from 344 to maybe less than 100. They're saying anywhere from 50 to 150. So it could be anybody's guess. And after the last 2024 elections, I'm not willing to stick my neck out after Indian polls that who's going to win and how much. But having said that, we need economic stagnation, 15 years, worst economic growth. Health, 7.6 million people in April 2024 were waiting for treatment, which is their NHS. Immigration concerns, 43% of the Britishers are not in favor of immigration, and especially given the large diaspora that they have. Housing crisis, the rents are going up, the prices are going high, and also the social housing is down by 89%. So it's going to be a very challenging task for whosoever comes next, be it Sir Keith Starmer, because things have not been right for the longest of time, and a lot of people in England don't even want to live in England. They're moving out to the European Union and to the United States. So Vineet, I think I see a tough job for whosoever inherits the fractured crown, pretty much which even Rishi Sunak did. That's my limited point until now.
Right. Gautam, once again, alluding to what Adit also said, that Rishi Sunak has done some good work. Of course, the camaraderie between him and the Prime Minister has always been very wholesome and eye-catching. But do you think that has really translated into gains for India?
I would say no. He's been good at the hugging and kissing, but what has he actually done for India or for Indo-UK relationships?
Or what has he done
The
against the
only thing I
elements
can
that
think
continue
of
to
is
thrive in UK,
Rolls-Royce.
Gautam? What has he done against the elements, the anti-national elements that continue to thrive in the United Kingdom as well?
The only thing, as I was saying, that I think has made some progress, though nothing on the ground as yet, is Rolls-Royce offering engines for the Navy. Rolls-Royce making some moves towards cooperating with India in its Atmanirbhar defense strategy. Other than that, nothing. I mean, it just our immigration policy is nowhere. Um, the FTA is nowhere. Uh, the crackdown on Khalistanis has not happened. I mean, they're not as active as before, perhaps, but they haven't been, dealt with sternly. It's the same with the Kashmiris. So I think he is definitely addressing his domestic audience as a conservative, and also in terms of the kind of diaspora and the mix of ethnicities that you now have in Britain. We're talking of very many Indians standing for election, as many as 100. So that means on both sides of the fence, of course. Having seen an Indian origin prime minister, let us see what we will see in the Labour cabinet. Now, the reason why the Conservatives will lose is they've been in there for too long, and the other side has now got its act together. It is not radical. It is well positioned to take power, and the Conservatives are not. They've been losing all the local elections, and the chances of them offering anything new and exciting to the public is simply not there. So, unless a miracle takes place, the Conservatives are not coming back.
Adit, Conservatives, they definitely have a lot of drawing room conversations to be had. And of course, the drawing board that they're going to go back to is also going to include what they did wrong in the last few years. What do you think exactly was that?
So obviously 15 years of anti-incumbency is a lot for a party as well. So that was always going to be a challenge, to mitigate. I mean, I was speaking to my neighbor who's always voted conservative, and this time around he said, irrespective of how they come out to woo him, he was always going to be voting for change. So that the anti-incumbency is obviously a factor. The other factor, which is actually going to cost the Conservatives massively, is the Reform Party, which a lot of people are actually not talking about. The Reform Party is basically talking about those core issues which the Conservatives at least 10 years ago used to talk about, are not talking about today, and are essentially going to be dividing the traditional conservative vote bank. People who are anti-immigration, people who are want are unionists in certain shape and form. So those are the kind of voters who are actually shifting away from the traditional conservative vote bank and moving to Reform Party. So Reform Party may just end up getting about anywhere between 10 to 15% of the vote. How many of that actually translate into seats is going to be a question that we will have to see. But ultimately, they are cutting into traditional conservative vote bank, which is going to be quite difficult for the Conservatives to actually mitigate. Number one. Number two, obviously Rishi Sunak, he hasn't been able to demonstrate a lot of work that he's actually done, especially with regards to immigration. The Rwanda plan that he actually initiated, would cost the exchequer roughly about 1.8 million per immigrant that he was actually going to ship off to Rwanda. But what he was not able to articulate or at least communicate to the general public in Britain was the fact that out of the 100 people that were meant to be sent into Rwanda in the first tranche, 98 of them actually said they would prefer to go back to their own home countries and not go into Rwanda. So so that is something which he didn't actually conversate or didn't actually communicate to the public. So the public actually didn't know that this plan was actually working in some shape and form. So the communication has been quite poor from the Conservative party management and the campaign management from that perspective, and where Labour has been very, very effective. They've been on the ground, they have a lot of enthusiasm, and they're working very seriously to talk about the core issues which are impacting people, which is, rising bills, rising the inflation, the food inflation, job security, the NHS. Those are some of the core issues that the Labour has been very, very proactively talking about, where I think the Conservatives have failed quite miserably, Vineet.
All right, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee is also joining us on the broadcast. Though, ma'am, we've almost run out of time, but we have enough time to accommodate your thoughts on the elections that are about to take place in the United Kingdom. The slew of topics that we have covered obviously include how Rishi Sunak has performed for his own country, which is of course not India, the United Kingdom. And secondly, what has he done when it comes to the relationship between the United Kingdom and of course India. Your overall analysis of what this is going to be, that made a very good point that this party has been in power for the past 15 years. That's a huge lot, many years for anti-incumbency to sink in, even for people who vote for them in a consistent manner. Your analysis, ma'am, on what might happen, and has Rishi Sunak also shot himself in the foot by preponing these elections to 6 months? He could have done something drastic in the next 6 months to turn this tide.
Absolutely, Vineet. My apologies, got stuck in traffic. Very quickly, therefore, my thoughts. First of all, let's face it, that when Rishi Sunak took over, nobody expected him to last more than 2 months. He has demonstrated by staying on that he has the necessary qualities of leadership, which the United Kingdom required. After two conservative prime ministers, one after the other, demonstrated they did not have those leadership qualities. He stuck firm to his beliefs, including the fact that he's not ashamed of the fact that he's a Hindu or that he practices his religion, but that he's completely Brit. He's proper Brit. He's a Hindu, but he's a Brit. I think that was a great demonstration that he's given. His Rwanda plan, to answer Adit, actually in many ways was a disaster because it demonstrated that he was willing to push back people in a manner which is neo-colonial back to an African country. In other words, it's almost like purchasing merchandise. You're purchasing a human soul whom you don't want here, and you are purchasing him and pushing him into another part of the world where you don't want to see or hear of him again. That was not something that did him any good in the eyes of supporters who come from the same kind of background that he comes from. As far as anti-incumbency is concerned, it is very important to remember that Rishi Sunak, in many ways, particularly if he loses his seat tomorrow, which seems probable, will be paying the price of the mistakes made by Boris Johnson and his successor, Boris Johnson's successor, Theresa May, and paying the price of Brexit, which was forced down the throat of a British public who were never told what would be the economic implications for the United Kingdom after Brexit. So in many ways, when Sunak loses, I'm not an astrologer, I'm sure he will lose. I'm sure he will lose very badly. I'm sure he will lose his own seat. He will be paying the price for the disastrous mistakes made by his predecessors. He's done well for the India-UK relationship. Let us not forget, whenever Labour has been in power, India has had huge problems. This relationship will have to face huge challenges when Labour comes to power, because when Labour comes to power, it brings with it a huge amount of baggage, which we've never been able to deal with. We have always, in United Kingdom, had extremely good relationships with the Conservatives, just like in US, extremely good relationship with the Republicans. That's a given. It's a strange thing to say on national television, but there will be hard days ahead of us when Labour will come back to power, particularly if it's with a big, overwhelming majority.
Good points, Mr. Lali. I see that you want to make a last comment. Go ahead, sir.
Just 2 points out of the 14-year-old anti-incumbency. I think it all started from David Cameron onwards, and Brexit and the handling of the pandemic were two major body blows, which subsequently trickled down to our poor Desi boy who couldn't do much beyond, because it was part of his unfortunate legacy. I mean, how can you can't be sudden Elizabeth Truss, who was only there for 50 days. So this has been going downhill for the last 14 years. So I think under the given circumstances, Rishi did a great job.
That's a great point.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.